Hello everyone, I am Tacit, and today I'm going to be going over the Gems of War event objectives for the 50 Shades of Pain event in which the Maiden of Pain is added to the game. So this week has a couple things going on. One of the more noteworthy ones is we are getting a new pet on this Wednesday, so don't forget to go get that for the 24-hour duration, and whatever this timer says is going to be the new pet. Will be available for that 24-hour duration, and then we'll come back at some point in the future, but with most of these cosmetic pets, they tend to be pretty hard to get in the future, so definitely make sure to go and get that. It is purely cosmetic though, of course. Beyond that, other things that we have going on this week is the Mythic from last Friday that we covered a video on is still in drop table for the next 4 days. Basically meaning until Friday reset, you might not want to open your Glory Gem Guild and VIP chest if you already have a copy or two of this. Main reason being is that it's the only mythic currently in those drop tables, so you'll just be getting a bunch of junk mythics instead of mythics that you might potentially need or need another copy of. So until Friday reset time, you probably don't want to be opening up keys unless you do still want to get copies of this. Beyond that, the other pretty big thing happening this week, or more so ending this week, is the PvP season. This is the final week to go and finish out any objective you want with the PvP season, whether that be any of the seasonal goals or hitting a certain amount of point milestone in order to go and get all of the season pass rewards, whatever you end up on to go for. This is the final week to do so. The other thing to mention too is don't forget to go use all of your statues. These only convert to a partial amount going into the following season. However, if you want to use them this week, you will get 100% of their value if you want to try going for your leaderboard or just to get more points to end up getting all the rewards or anything like that. It is the last week to go and spend these until they are auto-consumed going into the next season. Also, the final time to go get these, though these will be in the Soulforge in the future. I still believe none of these have actually rotated yet, but they are indeed rotating at some point. It has just been so long that we've got any of them in rotation. But if you don't end up getting these, they will be eventually in Soulforge. You'll be able to get them for 4,000 diamonds and 800 diamonds respectively. The silver one is pretty free because there's not really much else to spend silver on, though I do highly advise never getting the gold mark one. It is way better to be spending that on something like deed books or dragonite, but mostly deed books, as it's the best overall value that you can end up putting it into. Beyond that, but yeah, don't forget to go do that. Beyond that, where should we start? So let's go with the Ward event first, just to explain the game mode this week, as before we get into all the teams. So we do have extra spell damage and skull damage this time around, which means you can realistically build skull builds. Restriction is a little bit annoying this time around, as we have to use specifically assassins and generators of the color red. Luckily we do have access to generators, so at least we'll have a lot of good mana accumulation, though assassins tend to kill things like one at a time for the most part, so it will be a little bit slower to kill. Luckily you do have access to things like Zolgoth, as well as the new exploding mythic that we got last month, or 2 months ago at this point, since it's August now. But yeah, that new exploding mythic can end up being used too if you want to use that as an offset mana accumulator. We have things like Zolgoth with insta-kill, so it shouldn't be that bad. We have angry mobs that are really good, low rarity or even high rarity, or not high rarity, but you know, on any team, it's just a really good overall mass mana accumulation that has resummon into itself. Worst comes to worst, a single angry mob can solo an entire team, so just having that alone is enough to win, and just use that as a mana accumulation for whatever you want to use as your main damage source. But yeah, you do have access to both skulls and spell damage there instead of just spell damage. One other thing to keep in mind as far as the scoring, it's basically just don't take gluttony. Of course, you'll eventually be forced to have to keep taking a gluttony, but initially you want to try to take everything that is not a gluttony as far as how the reward system works. Gluttony is by far the worst amount of points, so just take every single room until you're left with just gluttonies, and then just keep spamming one single spot over and over again until you have all the points you need for your guild, or for leaderboard if you're going for leaderboard. Beyond that, we went over last week, but we do of course have the August event calendar, with the main thing happening this week being the pet. We do have the 8.8 patch coming at some point this month, though we do not know which week. And beyond that, we pretty much have something happening every week. We got a pet this week, Guild Wars next week for, what was it called? Suncrest, which going to be a little bit annoying. I believe there is one Suncrest troop in Soulforge this week, but it's not really a particularly good one. So if you're missing it, you're basically going to have to open Glory Gem Guild and VIP chest drop table in order to try to get stuff. And as I mentioned earlier, you probably want to wait until Friday, the 8th, in order to start opening your Glory Gem Guild and VIP chest, just to make sure you don't get the mythic that's currently in drop table, so that you can get the full drop table of everything else. So you basically have until that Friday of the 8th until the 13th to go get everything you want from the standard drop table for the upcoming Guild Wars, though there is no way to target it up until that point unless we get something really good in Soulforge next week, which we don't really know until that happens. Then beyond that, we have a 2-week holiday event and then a Volt weekend again. We actually had 2 Volt weekends this week, this month. One, of course, we just literally had the last few days, and the next one is right at the end of the month. So right at the beginning and right at the end, the final 3 days of the month, we end up having another Volt event weekend. But anyways, let's start getting into all the teams for everything. So, as we mentioned, the restriction for this one is Red, Assassin, and Generator. With that being said, Angry Mob is going to be probably your best mana generator in most circumstances. It can solo most things, has Enrage, which goes really well with the extra skull damage as well, ends up having a bunch of mana accumulation, has Resummon into itself, which just creates a whole army. Or he's using Wand of Stars, is just covering all colors and for standard mana accumulation, as well as if we need Bless or Curse. You can also run whatever hero class on it. We happen to be running Thief, just for a little bit extra insta-kill pressure because we're running Zolgoth. You can also run triple damage burning here, which I actually am considering switching it out for that. Do we do that? Let's do that, actually. That seems more fun. Let's go, gosh, what was it called? Not Assassin. What was, I think it's Slayer. I want to go Slayer here, actually. We haven't used Slayer in so long. It's like one of the few weeks we can actually get away with it. They do need to be able to be burned, but you can just do Curse with Wand of Stars and be fine. But yeah, Slayer is interesting. It has Enrage when an enemy dies. It also gets to get Enrage off of every extra turn. So it basically has Perpetual Enrage. And then, of course, the other main reason is his triple damage burning. So we're basically just doing that to just one-shot every single thing on the opposing team with a Zolgoth. Basically, this is an alternative old Zolgoth build. Yeah, let's go Slayer. Slayer's more fun here, since we can actually utilize the absurdly high amount of skull damage as long as they can be cursed, which, yeah, we just need to curse them first, get their burn immunity off, do a Zolgoth, boom, everything will just get one-shotted then between the extra amplification you get from the tokens combined, or the medals, combined with the fact that you have Enrage for 1.5 times damage, you have Enrage as well to hit through traits, and you have 3 times burning off of the final perk. So overall, yeah, it should be pretty free doing it with Slayer there. Then just Angry Mob for mana accumulation and Flaming Ani for even more burn. If you didn't already have enough burn, you get even more. There we go, perfect. Anyways, for the lower rarity team, we're just using Elementals to tank. I am using Angry Mob in first slot. You can offset this if you want. This can be any mana accumulation weapon you have. It does have to be red, but if you don't have Wand of Stars, just use whatever your best red mana accumulation weapon is. That happens to not conflict with the other ones because your team is already pretty heavy brown-red. But we're just using Gargoyle. You can get this from throwing Chaos Shards at Hall of Guardians. You can get this whenever. It ends up boosting based on all the attack on your team. It just does a decent amount of damage while having some mana accumulation. Basically, just spamming these while using your Angry Mob to mana accumulate for everything. You can also offset for another Angry Mob if you feel like this is dying too much in this order, where you can go double Angry Mob and just one Gargoyle or whatever big damage source you have. This is mostly just a big damage source that you own. It could be absolutely anything in the category. For this, we just happen to be doubling up on the Gargoyle, but you can just put a safer slot Angry Mob in a spot that will still get mana accumulation and then just feed into whatever your best red related damage source is for the category. As far as the faction event, this is a purple red. I want to say purple red. Yeah, it is a purple red restriction for that of Depths of Sin. For this, we're running a pretty standard Atlanta team. At the earlier range, just running the Leprechaun for purple, then running Atlanta to go and get all of our extra speed in order to go and just one-shot them over and over again. And we have Black Manacle and double Atlanta, which should kill all the way up to 100, even with lower stats. As far as the higher rarity team, we're just going with or higher range team, we're just running double Tesla. We do have access to Tesla because of red, so we can just go and mana accumulate Alpha Leprechaun, Wand of Stars to get rid of Submerge, same as Mechanist, and then just spamming Tesla until you end up winning due to her boost ratio off of all armor on the opposing team as well as your own, but mostly the enemy armor to end up scaling up throughout the entirety of the faction. And for the Pure Faction 500, we're just using an Iron Jaw to tank with. He has 50% score reduction and a little bit of durability gain. Unfortunately, no attack gain to go with it. However, you're mostly just casting him only as a last resort to make sure he doesn't die. You shouldn't really ever be using him otherwise, unless you kind of want to remove the skulls. And one thing that's really interesting about this Pure Faction is it is pretty much the only one that really scales with the enemy. There isn't really too much boost ratio that scales off an enemy like how Tesla does and stuff like that, present from Underworld troops. But this one does. It deals a bunch of damage to an enemy boosted by their attack. So for 500 Pure Faction, this ends up scaling out really well, because of course 500 Pure Faction has a really high attack value, and with that you'll be able to go deal a bunch of extra damage to them, and yeah, it just works out really well, and you're basically slowly taking mana. You could put a mana accumulator here in your second slot if you really want to, but the mana accumulation options aren't that good, and you're generally going to be better off just letting the enchant potion go and get a third Terrace to full mana. But otherwise, you could go a mana accumulation option for your second slot here in order to offset it a little bit. But otherwise, your enchant potion will just get you everything you need to go and kill them all out. And just keep spamming those out until you end up winning. As far as the Doomsayer class event, which will be this Thursday for the free 25 gems, we're basically just using a nice diverse team. I believe we did this for the cheaper team for Underspire as well. But keep in mind, Doomsayer not only has 20% extra stats this week, which means 20% more magic for whatever your weapon is, as well as every single stat, but also using Pierce and Mirage, pretty decent amount of stats, particularly in the attack and magic value. Of course, it could vary a bit depending on what your kingdom bonus is and what your pets are at. But right here, we're getting 14 magic and over, what is that, 51? Math. Yeah, 51 attack. That is a pretty hefty amount of stats. Give or take a little bit depending on where your parts, where your pets are and where the kingdom upgrades are. But that is a pretty solid amount of stats, almost all offensive too, which is really nice. So yeah, we're basically doing that using a Bane of Mercy in order to go and mana accumulate for Black Mana Gold, casting Black Mana Gold and winning. The other two are here mostly just for team bonus, so you can use Greed for a little bit of gold if you want in order to go cap out your gold for a little bit extra value. Beyond that, Underspire this week, of course, is specifically anything from Sin Mirage. For our first team here, we're using the Doomed weapon, which is in Soulforge if you want to go get it this week, the Doomed Volge. Pretty high priority as far as getting from Soulforge as well. Great for a lot of various events out there. But particularly good for this event, you could go either a pure purple team or a almost pure purple team using Bane of Mercy in order to mana accumulate purple on turn 1. This will make it so you get 2 less gem spawn every single time, but there will be enough purple enemies hopefully on the enemy team every single time that you'll be able to go get value from it. Otherwise, you could just go mostly into the Eclipse Dragon and just kill with this. This is obviously the main damage source. In a lot of the earlier battles, you're probably even shimmying around Hero in order to go just straight into him until he stops one-shotting, in which case you will have to go into a team more like this once he stops doing his one-shot abilities. But similar to the other team, you just go straight into Bane of Mercy, get all of your mana, and then just cast Doomed Volge and the Eclipse Dragon until you end up winning. And this spawn is mostly just here for a little bit of mana accumulation, a little bit of mana drain, and a little bit of extra damage poke. Doesn't really do too much, but does have backup summon if you happen to lose your first slot. If you're using a like Archmage's first slot, for example, if you want the extra mana instead of like Dispel for Submerge and stuff, you could go Archmage's, which will make it a lot squishier. So if it does die, it does have backup summon for that one slot, so you have a meat shield so your Eclipse Dragon can stay alive for longer. As far as the lower rarity for Underspire, once again, we are going pretty much all into the bonus stats. Really good earlier on in the game. Even if you're not getting this amount of stats, you're still getting some amount of decent stats, which will make you not only a little bit tankier, but it'll increase your amount of overall damage output. For this, we're using the Bane of Gods. If you don't have this, it is in Soulforge this week. Just a pretty standard mana accumulation weapon. Nothing really too special as far as its perks, but it does have a bonus to all Sin Mirage troops, which of course includes your entire team. So the entire team will gain a random status effect whenever you use it. The main premise of this team is Bargus. Ends up dealing a bunch of damage to the first 2 enemies and then burn and fairy fire them. This is actually stronger than the mythic that's based off of it from a different kingdom, so overall really strong. Guaranteed double burn, fairy fire, really solid. Unfortunately no follow-up, but it's still a pretty good ability. It gets to do a little bit of mana accumulation from the explode. I believe every single thing on this team except the Tartarus has the explode as well. Really nice for getting just a little bit of extra starting mana. Most things in Sin Mirage have this trait. And now we're just using the same thing that you would have been using for the Pure Faction, just because it scales really well. For the same reason why it would scale to higher level Delves, the same reason why it's pretty good for Underspire as it is for Underworld as well. In that it scales based on their attack, so once you start getting to like floor 4, 5, 6, particularly 6, it scales really, really well since it just scales to whatever their value is. So regardless of how deep you are, he'll pretty much be just as effective on floor 3 as he would be on floor 6, just because of how his damage ends up scaling based on their stats. So overall, really nice. And can help offset a little bit of your damage. You can also combine them together because this is Fairy Fire, which is 50% more spell damage to your anything else that hits them. So you can initially do the Bargist and then go and hit them with Tartarus, so that he'll end up doing 50% extra damage into his already boost ratio that's pretty high. So you'll be able to get a really solid amount of damage with that combo. Dark Herald here is mostly just because he has Barrier, but it does have a decent amount of mana accumulation if he gets lucky on it. Ideally, you're hoping for yellow, but occasionally he will do blue half the time because you don't get to choose, unfortunately. This isn't a choice. It is random either or. So it'll either half the time do blue, half the time do yellow. You're hoping it does yellow. If it does do blue, it feeds back into himself at least. If it does, and you could try again. And if it does yellow, then you basically are good to go because you get your book to full, you'll get Tartarus almost to full or pretty high, and then you just cast your book and you're good to go, and then everything's at full mana, and you just rinse and repeat over and over again until you end up winning. As far as the Bounty Hunter, we do have a Bounty Hunter event this weekend if you're going to do the free battles or go through the entire thing, either or. It is generally pretty pricey to end up going through it, but it's about 710 gems to get 2 orbs, a maxed out troop, and a few other loots that you get across it. Definitely not as good value as it used to be back in the day, but still an okay event, and you definitely want to do at least the free battles for any Bounty Hunter ever. As far as Bounty Hunter, there are basically 2 core teams that you ever end up running. A 3x team that runs really quickly if you just want to go for 250,000 or just want to get the event done as quickly as possible, or the really min-maxy team that just runs 4 Bounty Hunter troops, which is a bit slower to end up doing, a lot slower actually, depending on what your damage source is, but ends up getting the maximum amount of points, so per sigil that you end up using, you will maximize the amount of points. This is generally only really needed if you want to spend less gems on the bounty event, or if you want to go for leaderboard. But otherwise, this tends to be a little slow if you have Stellarix and or Flower Dragon and or any one damage source that is really good. So for the 3 times bounty team, this just uses 3 bounty troops, Ogress, the Forest Guardian, or Gremlin, and whatever the new bounty captain is that's coming out this Friday, and you just use that as your team. Ogress is for all the mana accumulation and is super tanky, and even gets to summon a super tank when it dies. We have Forest Gremlin, which can do a little bit of Fairy Fire for 50% extra damage, or a little bit of damage poke, but most importantly is used for its trait, is it gets to start with Green Storm as well as a Green Link. So if you can get whatever your main dragon is, or whatever your main damage source is going, you'll be able to get a lot of mana accumulation that way, especially with your banner set to double green, and then just whatever the new bounty captain is all the way in the back in order to bolster up your score. And as far as the 4 times bounty hunter team, it is still just pretty standard one. This hasn't really changed the meta in quite a while. There are some skull metas that you can kind of use, but I still feel like this is the best overall strategy for bounty if you're going 4 times, which is Ogress Warrior, once again, for the really high amount of tank ability and mana accumulation. The Tagraki Warrior, which is pretty much the staple of bounty hunter teams if you're running 4 times. It is the main thing that can do any amount of damage because it has boost ratio. It ends up boosting based on their armor, so it scales pretty well to the final fight that has a lot of durability. So you end up doing this and just doing a bunch of true damage in order to go poke them down, and is your main damage source for a 4 times bounty hunter team. Then we have Corpse Mirror, has a little bit of mana accumulation, a little bit of lifesteal, and has a little bit of true damage to go with your Tagraki. Can help offset if you're nearly at a kill but not quite there in order to go and get the last little bit you need. Also does link it to itself, so it gets mana a little bit quicker, as well as a really low mana cost of only 10 for how much value it does, as a lot of times you can mana accumulate most of that just from the Destroy a Row with the cascaded mana, as well as everything in its path that gets destroyed for that 8 mana that you get to accumulate. Might not be all for Corpse Mirror, but you do get 8 mana from it. And beyond that, just put whatever the bounty captain is, of course, in last slot in order to maximize your score for the bounty hunter event. And of course, if you are getting the bounty captain, make sure to upgrade it as far as you possibly can, as it does influence how much score you get. Every single one, the bounty troops get up to 6 times if they're fully upgraded, and the bounty captain does double that, so up to 12 times if it's fully maxed out and everything. But yeah, that's pretty much this bounty event. A little bit of a slower event unless you're running the 3 times team, but you do get a bunch of rewards along the way that can be worthwhile. Beyond that, other things we have going on this week, let's go peek at Soulforge. Soulforge actually has a lot of troops kind of worth mentioning as far as the mythic category. So one thing to mention as far as legend, Sir Quentin Hadley is here. He does have 50% mana start to all knights. Generally, it's not worth going for legends, so this is one that is used occasionally if you really want to get him. Not the worst thing in the world, but generally speaking, you do want to avoid pretty much any legend that isn't Tesla from Soulforge. But if you did really want to go try like a Guards Avatar team or something else that synergizes really well with Knight, you could potentially go and get it. But for the most part, most legends are worth skipping. One thing worth mentioning that isn't normally considered that good, but in this current circumstance might be worth considering. If you have absolutely nothing at all to run for the upcoming Suncrest event week, this might be the last thing you could potentially get that would help you out if you literally have nothing at all. It is Zillopochli, generally considered one of the worst mythics, if not the worst mythic from the location. However, he fills a lot of colors that 4 times Suncrest teams tend to not have. So he ends up doing that pretty well. Beyond that, he is basically budget Zolgoth, which of course we have things stronger than Zolgoth these days, like the Maelstrom Dagannoth, which recently came into the game about a month ago or so from the last patch. But this is back when Zolgoth was the meta, and they were kind of scared to add things stronger than it, which is kind of funny now that there's like a billion things stronger than it. However, it was back when they didn't quite want to do this, so this is basically ultra super mega weak Zolgoth. Just deals a bunch of damage to an enemy boosted by purple gems at a boost ratio that is way too small, and if there's a storm, it'll deal double damage, which generally in a Suncrest team you will almost always have access to some kind of storm, so that's basically guaranteed double damage. But the main thing here is if he ends up getting a kill, he creates 12 skulls just like Zolgoth. No extra stats effects or anything like that, but he does get to create the 12 skulls. So might be worth considering if you have absolutely nothing, as he will likely fill out the coloration in your team. But this is an absolute last resort if you're missing like pretty much every mythic from the location. You just need to get something there. He also gets to Death Touch, so he gets to do a potential insta-kill. And beyond that, he also gets to do 12 damage to a random enemy every time you take yellow. It is pretty common because the hero class for this place has Perpetual Yellow Storm. So if you are going to be utilizing that, not only is that the storm you need, of course, for his boost ratio for his ability, but you'll have Yellow Storm, so you'll get a ton of yellows onto the board that will end up boosting this up to constantly keep doing damage to the opposing team. Biggest issue, of course, that is very obvious is he does not use yellow himself, which is good for covering more colors in the kingdom, but makes it so he can't really mana accumulate at all, given that most teams in this kingdom are really yellow heavy as far as mana accumulation is concerned. Overall, I would definitely say you'll be perfectly fine not having this, but maybe worth considering if you're looking at what your current teams are for the Suncrest event week and you feel like you might need him to offset it. But otherwise, you'll probably be able to run something even if you don't have him, or any of the mythics. There are a few other strategies that can be used. They're going to be going over teams this week. We'll saving it for next week when the Guild War will be about. Beyond that, this isn't anything. What is this? Why do I forget which one this even is? This isn't one of the old... No, it isn't. Okay, this is one of the Centaur things. I thought that was one of the old ones coming back. Never mind. Anyways, so, as far as Fairy Godmother, this is the best Wish Gem troop in the game overall as far as spamming Wish Gems. Not only does it have a chance to do Wish Gem every single turn off its trait, but also gets to create Wish Gem most of the time, or at least a third of the time, off of its ability. It's very rarely used, but there are some really gimmicky teams that have really high mana costs that this can be your mana accumulator for. It's just generally match destroying and other things that are currently within the game, or even just running double of like Explode at start of battle, or double Takshaka and other things like that, tend to be better overall value than messing with Wish Gems. The biggest issue with Wish Gems is they have a 1 in 5 chance every time you take a Wish Gem to also end up giving the enemy full mana, while your old team will get full mana simultaneously. It'll either do 1, 2, 3, or 4 of your allies to full mana, but 1 in 5 times it'll do all your allies and all your enemies to full mana, which is really scary, especially with how many Wish Gems it creates. You could very easily, within a couple turns, just end up giving the entire enemy team full mana, which in areas where it is dangerous, like PvP, you know, where there's like actually really good teams built and stuff like that, can very heavily backfire. But as far as Wish Gem mechanic is concerned, it is among one of the better ways to do it if you're ever looking for it. The other one, that actually, there's another two that are kind of noteworthy. Honestly, almost every mythic's worth mentioning this time around. Elder Dragon is the only one of the Eldamagrim like troops that scales based on itself. Most of the other ones need something else on your team to really scale properly, like Eldamagrim needs Burn, the yellow one ends up needing Bless on your team, something else to Bless, like Wand of Stars or something similar. But this thing actually comes built in with the mechanic it needs. It boosts ratios off a curse and creates cursed gems, which are brown gems. So it still gets the mana accumulate into itself, but also has the mechanic it needs to end up boosting. It will have a little bit of a first bad cast if you don't have an alternative way to curse, as the max you'll be able to get is 9. However, after that, it is doing the full 13 gem spam every single time. And it's not the greatest thing out there, but it can be decent. One other interesting gimmick is it gets to eliminate a bunch of magic from all enemies. So if you're up against a team, or if you're in a game mode where the magic doesn't get particularly high, but enemies still need magic, this would be a good way to get them down. Because if you guys have like 10 extra turns, that's 30 less magic on all enemies. And depending on the game mode or the enemy stats or anything else like that, that's like half their magic, depending on the situation. So that's a lot of value they end up getting to chip down. And of course, you can get even more beyond that. So overall, not that bad. Definitely very niche as far as when it's brought out, but it is definitely usable. And beyond that, King of Ravens is, unfortunately, while it is a Strix, which is generally, you know, what most of Suncrest is, the next Guild War event is specifically Suncrest, not Strix, which does limit a few other options. Would this unfortunately be one of them? You cannot run this in the next Guild War. Even though it's Strix, it is specifically not a Suncrest Strix. But the main noteworthy thing with this is you get to create a bunch of Spirit Gems per turn while having a bunch of mana accumulation. It is generally a really annoying mana drain spamming troop. Very rarely used, but there are some categories where you do end up bringing it out, like for Glacial Peaks or for Fae or for even maybe for Strix occasionally. But it is basically as a mana drain spammer. It's very, very, very average, but if the enemy team really wants to have a lot of mana and you just need some kind of option to make sure that they don't get it and they don't have immune to mana drain, this could be a great way to offset it in order to go and get your mana drain that you need every single turn on the opposing team. And beyond that, all the standard stuff. As far as weapons are concerned, wow, really good Soulforge this week overall. Soulforge, you're mostly just looking to pick up stuff for the event. Also, I forgot to double check the 2. I highly doubt it is. But I always get paranoid that I will forget to mention. Like the 1 week I don't remember to check them. It's like, oh yeah, it's this kingdom, isn't it? But no, even when I know like almost for sure that it's none of them, I always want to double check. But yeah, you don't need it for any of them. So when it comes to weapons this week, you're only really looking for probably 2. Bane of the Gods was the exploding weapon we showed earlier. Just a boost ratios off All Sin and Mirage. You'll be having to do this guaranteed for Underspire. So if you're looking for a safer way to end up getting Underspire done this week, this is probably your best bet to end up completing it, especially at the lower rarity range. Beyond that, the Doomed weapon is probably the most noteworthy one. The Doomed, where is it? Somewhere's in all this mess. Where's the Doomed spiky weapon thingy? It's getting like mixed up in all these other ones. Where is it? I know it's here. Doomed Volge. There it is. But yeah, Doomed Volge. We showed this on the higher rarity one for Underspire, but it's also good in just a lot of event weeks, especially whenever you're restricted to a 4x purple team, but you're allowed to use any color purple weapon. This is most noteworthy on Tower of Doom events, but oh, never mind. You can't use it because you have to use the Doom weapon. I forgot. But you can still do it on any other restriction like PvP where you're restricted to pure color or anything else like that, where it boost ratios based on all the purple on your team, and you basically just keep spamming it out. The enemy team is likely to have at least 1 purple, and in that situation where you have 4 purple and the enemy has 1, you'll be creating 10 purple gems for 18 mana. So you'll be able to keep spamming out this damage, getting a bunch of stats and everything else, a bunch of damage on them, a bunch of mana accumulation. Overall, very niche item, but if you're forced to use a pure color team, can be very good in those situations. Or in game modes where you might not have as much options, you could force your own team into pure purple in order to get more value from this weapon. For example, the Underworld this week, or Underspire, I mean, where you can end up going with 3-4 purples on your team, use either the Empower or not use the Empower, and then just have this be very, very strong off of that. Particularly good if you don't have the dragon as well. If you don't have the Cosmic Dragon, offset your damage. But even with the Cosmic Dragon, you could do it just to offset his damage and get even more mana accumulation into it. So overall, great damaging weapon, great mana accumulation weapon, and probably the highest priority, with Bane of the Gods being the second highest. But yeah, most of the mythics are pretty skippable. They're nice utilities, but for the most part, you don't really need any of them. They're just kind of offset troops that can help fill out some of the teams that exist within the game. Anyways, beyond that, we kind of already went over a little bit with the calendar earlier, but this Tuesday we have the red-purple restriction of Depths of Sin. Wednesday we have the International Cat Day pet. Don't forget to go get that. Will only be available for that 24-hour duration when it ends up coming, and then it will come who knows when at some kind of point in the future. They do rotate back, but normally they're money locked or something similar. So yeah, if you want to get it for free, get it this Wednesday. It's purely cosmetic, so if you do end up missing it, not too big a deal. But might as well just get it this Wednesday when you can. Thursday we have the class event for Doomsayer. Overall, generally a pretty weak hero class, but does have 20% extra stats this week, and has pretty good synergy with a 4-time Cinema Mirage team. So you might be using it a little bit this week, but beyond that, you're pretty much never going to touch it again until the next Cinema Mirage week. And as it says right here, of course, this Friday, we have Bounty Hunter, which we went over with all the teams and everything earlier. Beyond that, yeah, we already went over this earlier. Just make sure to go and use a pure red team with all the strikers and everything. Just don't take Gluttony because you don't really need it. You'll take everything except Gluttony and then just keep spamming the same spot over and over again. I generally like doing it to the bottom slot here so that you can click a little bit quicker on mobile or PC. On console doesn't matter as much, but it makes it so you don't have to move as far your finger and or mouse in order to keep clicking. So do every single battle until it's just Gluttonies, and then this very last battle, you can just click very quickly at the bottom. Just keep repeating that one over and over again until you have all the points you need for the event. And then, oh yeah, event keys. I haven't went over event keys, mostly because Cinema Mirage, it was the last kingdom that was added back when they did the first wave of kingdoms. So recently we've been getting a new kingdom again for the last few years, about every year and a half or so. It's still been about a year and a half since we got in the recent one. Almost gonna be 2 years soon. But so the longest duration since they have been doing it again. But in the previous waves, when they end up doing all the initial kingdoms, this was the very last one to end up coming in. So it doesn't have that many troops compared to most kingdoms in the game. This can be good in the sense that it allows you, if there's something you do want, it's a little bit easier to target. But it's also bad in the sense that there just isn't really as much to go for that is worthwhile at all. So if we end up going for this, everything that is and is not in drop table includes things that are not in drop table includes the 5 faction troops from Depths of Sin, as well as, I feel like I'm forgetting an important one, the 10 of Wands, which is only in the Vault Key drop table, though of course we did just have a Vault Event weekend, so you can do that. And the Immortal Abaddon, this is only from doing burning chests from PvP. And of course, this is the last week for PvP season, so make sure to go and clear that up. And then next week, you'll be able to go get a bunch more burning gems to get all of them. And then, of course, the Eclipse Dragon. This one is only from the Cosmic Dragon drop table in the Soulforge. So as far as things that are in drop table, is it worth opening event keys? I would say probably not. If there's some troops that you kind of want to get in order to offset stuff, you can end up doing so. But, gosh, phone's going off. Why would it stop? There it goes. I think that's the first time that's happening in a recording. But anyways, where were we? Yes, so troops that are worth and not worth. If you need something to offset, so Barghest can end up doing Fair Fire Burn. So if you want that for Fair Fire, really good. We do have Wrath. I haven't really mentioned him up to this point, but he is a double converter. He transforms all blue into brown and all yellow to skull, while enraging all allies and burning all enemies. Pretty decent. You can also do it with a triple damage burning hero class in order to get a lot of value, as you'll be enraging them up and getting the burn you need, so as well as the skulls you need. So it ends up working out really, really well if you want to do triple damage burning hero class route. If you're going to be going for event keys, you have 3 mythics that are in drop table: the Scourge of Honor, the Queen of Sin, and the Bane of Ambition. For the most part, the only one you really care about is Scourge of Honor. He's kind of fallen off a bit ever since we've gotten the Flower Dragons, Stellaric, stuff like that. However, he is still a decent way of doing true damage. He deals a bunch of true damage to all enemies and gains a bunch of mana back for each cursed and diseased enemy, which is actually a lot because he gets the curse and disease on his mechanic. So a lot of times when you bring them out, you're mostly bringing them out because of Curse Disease these days, more so for that boost ratio, as it's really good for just getting it down since you already have the Curse to go with it. So to be able to hamper their mana accumulation ends up working out really well, while you also have more ways of mana accumulating. But yeah, it's basically just a way to kind of offset true damage. Generally, Tesla is going to be better, generally Stellark's going to be better, and Flower Dragon. However, he is still occasionally useful, including for some things this week, especially if you don't own something like the Cosmic Dragon, but you have the event keys to potentially go for the 1 in 3,000 Scourge of Honor or so. Might be worth considering, but for the most part, it's a pretty skippable week unless you're just looking to bolster up the kingdom or get to like 10 star, 20 star, whatever other objective. Actually, it can even be, yeah, it can be 20 starred, but if you're looking to get it to one of those milestones for those little bit of extra stats that it has, of which it gains attack, which is actually a pretty solid one as well. Beyond that, other things. What's the other thing? Oh yeah, the troop. So the only thing we haven't gone over now is the weekly troop, the Maiden of Pain. As far as Maiden of Pain is concerned, great time to stock up on brown, red arcanes. As you get 200 glory each, you can end up getting that. As far as this troop, it doesn't really do that much. Deals a bunch of damage to an enemy if they are bleeding, deal double damage, and inflicts 2 stacks of bleed on them. Just doesn't really do that much value. There's a little bit of tanky, I guess, has a 50% score reduction. Also gets to have a little bit extra cursed gems, which does feed into itself. It does use brown, and cursed gems are brown, so a little bit of extra value there, though not really much. For the most part, pretty average. It's not amazing, it's not awful, but there just isn't really much of a situation where you're going to be using it. There's already other things within the kingdom that can tank and generally have a better durability gain, because normally if you're using a tank, you kind of want something that doesn't die, like having barrier, like having you know, some kind of durability gain, whereas it doesn't have any of it. It has like a damaging ability with a pure tanky trait setup. So it's in a very weird in-between where just really isn't a need to go and end up using this troop, unfortunately. So yeah, even in early game, there's likely better tanks that you can end up scrapping together. If you absolutely have to use it as your tank, it'd be perfectly fine. But there are better things within the kingdom context that you will be able to go and use. But anyways, guys, if you still have any other questions, feel free to leave in the comment section below. All the teams will be in the pinned comment and description if you want to go and copy paste any of them for the entire week. And don't forget, this is the final week to go and complete out the PvP season. So any of the season pass you want to get, especially if you paid for it, any of the seasonal goals that you want to go and end up completing in order to get all those free rewards, make sure to do so, as this is the final 7 days to complete it. And by next Monday reset, it will be gone and will be in the next PvP season. Anyways, guys, hope you all have a wonderful week, and I'll catch you guys later. Goodbye, everyone, and thanks for watching.